Dawn bruised the sky as maglev lines stitched silver arcs over Neo-Seoul's swollen arteries. The city pulsed, thick, synchronized, its citizens interconnected by neural bridges, invisible filaments of thought. Rush hour morphed sidewalks into shifting pixelated shoals. Ji-hoon, augmentation marks gleaming blue along his jaw, pressed deeper into the crowd, his mind riding the rhythm of 1,000 fleeting impulses. He was outcast, augmented, wired, used to his own code bumping against the city's regulated neural traffic. At the intersection, the air shimmered with a sudden, indistinct hum. Lear, her genes unmodified, rebel to her core and suspicious of enhancements, strode past, thoughts sharp and wary. She felt it before she saw it. A lurch, a stutter in the city's ambient feed, like a skipped heartbeat. In an instant, something slashed through the membrane of privacy, and two strangers collided, not physically, but mentally, caught in a glitch neither chose. Ji-hoon staggered, vision fragmenting. He was aware of crowds and, impossibly, another viewpoint. Crisp, memory-tinged glimpses of morning tea, laughter with a sister, a father's shadow in the kitchen. Lear's consciousness tangled with his. Disoriented, she clutched her head, feeling intrusive splices, late-night code runs. The agony of a calibration session. A mother's warning to not trust the natural born. Two minds, their every sense, opinion, memory abruptly entwined. No boundary, no filter. Thoughts flashed unbidden. Now here, I'm seeing my own hands. I'm feeling what you feel. And fragments of unfamiliar sorrow swelled in both. The city didn't care. Faces streamed past, neural bridges sparkling overhead, most citizens sharing shorthand, tidbits, but always contained Ji-hoon, and Lear, however, had none. The merge was raw and total, an uncontrolled download. Corporation drones overhead pulsed red, sniffing for anomalies. Inside a fortress 30 floors up, the traffic monitor's pupils fluttered over feeds. A spike. A disturbance. Two signatures blurring at intersection 224. Alarms blinked. Containment protocols spun up. And electromagnetic erasure cycles armed. If a merge threatened the neural net's structural integrity, its hosts could be erased. Corporate mandate. Unstable minds are expendable. Restoration comes before individuality. Beneath glass towers, panic spun up between Ji-hoon. Restoration comes before individuality. Beneath glass towers, panic spun up between Ji-ho and the swarm of evacuees, who poured out of the hourglass-shaped atrium. Security drones swooped overhead, their triangular irises flickering as they scanned each face, cataloging anxiety, sweat, and urgency. A voice, cold and modulated, boomed from the loudspeakers beside the entrance. Remain calm. Emergency protocols are active. Proceed to designated shelter zones. Your compliance ensures your safety. No one listened. The world outside had begun dissolving into a mist of sirens and shimmering dust. A graying smog that rose from the city's underbelly, swirling among neon signs like specters hungry for life. Ji-ho pressed herself against the curve of a crystal elevator shaft, heart throbbing. She gripped the insulated canvas of her messenger bag, feeling the sharp outline of the tiny, forbidden crystalline chip hidden inside. Behind her, Minso, the shuttle technician, whose knuckled hands had fixed countless rescue pods in the Undercity, darted through the press, eyes bright but unsure. Ji-ho, can you get out? They've sealed the mid-levels already. Ji-ho gave a curt nod, brushing hair from her cheek. Her gaze swept the crowd for a glint of familiar faces. Anyone from her small circle of resistance engineers. Anyone whose trust ran deeper than protocol. Instead, she saw only strangers. The shimmering insignia of restoration, with its double helix wound around a stylized seed, pulsed from every screen. A trembling woman, child in tow, sobbed and clutched Minso's sleeve. The air is burning. Please, is there a safe zone? My boy, he can't breathe. Minso knelt. We'll find a purifier, okay? Stick close. But the words dissolved between waves of static erupting from the towers, a digital fog rolling in to stifle real thought. Ji-ho's mind flickered, memory racing. The city's lifeblood had always been its data-translucent rivers streaming through quantum cores. streets mapped in algorithmic time, but since the restoration authorities had seized the council's node, everything, air, light, even personal thought, felt filtered and sterile. Individuality wasn't just lost, it was extracted, diluted into the endless nothing of compliance. A surge of bodies pressed past, carrying Jiho and Minso toward a side corridor. The city's drums pulsed overhead in alternating amber and blue, each strobing light sending fractured shadows careening down the polished ceramic walls. Jiho stumbled, swept in the crush of panicked citizens. His hand locked around Minso's slender wrist, while her short hair whipped behind her in the shifting current. The air trembled with the electronic banshee wail and distant concussion of explosive charges shaking the city's far southern arc. The corridor opened beneath their feet, narrowing into a steep ramp that funneled the crowd into a subterranean platform. Overhead, glimmering glyphs and rapid-fire projections flickered. Warning, breach at inner defense vector. Seek low shelter. Jiho tried to steady himself as Minso hurled herself forward, feet bracing against the ramp's uneven steps. Their breath fogged against plasteel dust that sifted down, each inhalation sharp with ozone. Beside them, a man in a neon rescue suit shouted over the chaos. "Keep moving. Maintain contact." He gestured at fevered intervals, toward a half-shuttered bulkhead, where automated lockdown doors were cycling open and closed, groaning beneath some massive external pressure. Beyond, Jiho glimpsed a seething blue cloud, laced with tendrils of violet fire crawling up the inner city shell, a breach catalyst, sent from outside, alien and swift in its devastation. Jiho's eyes darted upward to the city's ancient supports, remembering the stories about Titan's orbit, how gravity here was engineered, pressed and spun from the distant sun's pull by arcane machinery built generations before. "Are the shield nodes holding?" he gasped. Though his voice was lost beneath the shouts and the successive boom, boom of distant charge bursts, Minso managed a reply. Her voice small but fierce. "Sector 8 is down. If we don't reach deep shelter." Her words vanished in the uproar as a cluster of children pressed past, shepherded by a silver-cloaked elder, her face hollowed by decades of watchfulness. Jiho and Minso dove sideways into the mouth of a service passage. The walls here hummed with the thrum-thrum of defensive circuits fighting against the energy overload. From outside, Minso pressed her palm to a sensor plate that glowed dull green, and a hatch irised open before them. They slipped inside and collapsed against cold steel crates stacked high, slick with condensation. For several heartbeats, Jiho focused only on the rhythm of his breathing, the tight hitch in his chest. The rush of air through sore lungs, Mira's hand found his wrist anchoring them both as stray beams of pale blue light flickered through cracks in the crates above. Outside, the security drones hovered with a low, unceasing hum, their sensor arrays blindly searching the warehouse's shadowy hollows. Jiho strained his senses for any sign of pursuit bootsteps on metal. The static crackle of radio chatter, but it was only the dull thud of his heart and Mira's shallow breaths beside him. The bitter chill clinging to the crates seeped through fabric, igniting his nerves with a prickling awareness. He forced himself to move, squeezing between the crates, silently beckoning Mira further in. The darkness cocooned them, hiding them as the drones drifted past, sharp beams skating across concrete and pooling in distant corners. Jiho tensed at each pass, feeling their presence brush against him. But no alarms blared. Eventually, the warehouse returned to its baseline quiet, a stillness broken only by Mira's murmured, "We need to get higher. It's not safe down here." He nodded. His shoulders still throbbed from where he'd collided with the fence outside, a steady drumbeat of pain. Grimacing, he pressed his palm to the wound and forced himself upright. Mira's eyes glimmered as she scanned the maze of crates. She was thinner than he remembered from childhood, but her gaze was sharp and calculating, a survivor's look, honed by necessity. Jiho adjusted the rough satchel at his side. Inside, the microcore thrummed faintly, a heartbeat of stolen data that could rewrite everything the city's authorities believed. "There," he whispered, indicating a set of stacked containers rising in uneven steps toward the gantry overhead. Mira nodded, and they crept through the gaps, slow and deliberate, boots squelching against patches of melted frost. The microcore hummed louder the higher they climbed, picking up interference from the security systems embedded in the building. Jiho's hand ached to shield it, yet he knew the mission mattered more than comfort. At the top, beneath the spider-webbed shadow of gantry beams, they huddled, surveying the midnight sprawl beyond the warehouse wall. Towers gleamed with phosphorescent signage. Far off, traffic pulsed across skyways like droplets of mercury. The North Sector's government complex rose on the horizon, a geometric monolith of steel, glass, and bioluminescent neon lattices, shimmering with the encoded pulse of 10,000 decisions made every second. In the city's humming heart, under that looming edifice, every line of policy and quantum calculation filtered into the veins of a civilization that prided itself on foresight, though so often it was prey to unseen consequences. Below, on the pedestrian thoroughfare girdling the structure, Cal Vane watched Rena's reflections flicker across the mirrored walls, her stride confident but wary. Both of them had come too far to feel anything but the high-tension coil of anticipation. The drive they'd stolen thrummed in Cal's sleeve pocket, its weight somehow more meaningful than any weapon. It contained evidence, a fractal map of anomalies encoded by the city's quantum planners. Proof of the errors, the divergences. The machine gods had miscalculated. Entry access, Rena murmured, low enough only Cal could hear, as they drew near the auxiliary terminal. Script patch ready? He nodded, thumb brushed the tiny console hidden inside his sleeve. Rena slid her palm over the scanner, a faint whir as the device's identity engine warred with her forged sequence. A trembling moment. Then, the door release hissed, and they were swept inside amid the surf of authorized personnel. Inside the main security vestibule, the cold air prickled with electric anticipation. Civil servants in tailored neural fiber suits strode past, their expressions blank as coded statues. Above, surveillance mosaics tracked every movement. Cal felt the biting gaze of the city's sentience, algae-green irises shimmering from every glass node. Rena circled toward an access alcove, her posture overtly casual, only her eyes betraying her hyper-awareness. Third sub-tier network analysis chamber, she whispered, just above the hum of a ventilation array. You got the palimpsest sequence. Burned, Cal whispered back. Only a single pass. Once I run it, it's gone. A pause, the air around them felt raw, full of static. Some deeper logic, nestling in the building's encoded architecture, seemed to pulse beneath their feet, alert, hungry. They moved in, passing through the layered transit corridors. Security was thick, but rhythmic. Protocol guards in mirrored visors and chassis-plated uniforms idling at checkpoints. Every few meters, signatures spiked the building running routine, but potent sweeps for mind anomalies. Biometric slippage, nanite residue. Sierra let her gaze drift past them, not lingering. Her hood fell deep over her brow, braiding shadow across the ridgeline of her cheekbones. A classic trick, inward focus, breathing in shallow cycles so that her neural broadcast stayed non-reactive. Sierra and Sedge moved with the quiet instancy of those who belonged, bottling the pulse of uncertainty beneath standard operational confidence. Their bodies were wrapped in second skin cloaks, every fiber threaded with distortion countermeasures, masking their electric presence in the corridor's humming flows. Even the patterns of their footsteps had been calculated. Sedge's left toe tapped 2 centimeters off. Sierra's cadence shifted every 8th stride. I'm seeing 3 nodes, thermal pings to your right, Sedge whispered, heads-up overlay flickering across his boggles. His voice was barely a vibration. Sierra nodded. The council's core suite was still 6 floors up, but the lower levels bristled with nested sensor webs. A fractal of alertness. One slip, and the whole system would unfold like a flower. Not for the first time, she thought of Mail and Rix waiting in the shuttle, and the thin silver conduit running from Mail's optics into her own pack. The relay buzzed against her skin, heartbeat sync, trust encoded into galvanic skin pressure. They swept past a maintenance node, coils and coolant pipes, erased serial numbers stamped under grime. The air grew colder, infused by the recycled breath of thousands. Distant, muffled voices echoed, bureaucratic, tense. She caught sight of a council clerk, hands fluting over a glass console. the fingers paraphrasing codes with machine-quick certainty. Behind, a pair of council aides moved files into archival tubes, the whisper-thin data filament flashing blue as it sealed. Without pause, Syrah and Sedge merged into the tide, slow, steady, unremarkable. Most of the checkpoints were designed for deterrence, not interception. Heavy doors, magnetic sweepers, retinal samplers tucked into ornamented frames. Sedge played the part perfectly. Council adjutant with a backlog of idents, the slight weariness in his posture suggesting bureaucratic exhaustion, hardened by practice. A guard with gauntlet-sized hands blocked their path, visor reflecting Syrah's face in cold mercury. She kept her gaze steady and offered the clearance wafer. The guard's scanner flashed, tracing the wafer. The guard's scanner flashed, tracing the wafer with a slow, deliberate sweep that cast stark lines of red and green light across Mara's gloved hand. Every muscle in her body felt wound tight, tension flooding her nerves. She knew the clearance code encoded in the wafer was authentic, thanks to Fox's sleepless nights. But legitimacy was a fragile shield, this deep in the station's forbidden lattice. A faint chime marked the completion of the scan, and the guard's eyes narrowed, the pale blue irises catching stray glimmers from the scanner's display. He considered her for a tucked moment, calculating, weighing. Mara set her shoulders square, projecting the measured confidence she'd rehearsed in front of the Habpod mirror, assuring herself that strangers would believe she belonged. The guard's thumb flicked across his reader. Verifying the sequence, Mara caught the edge of his holstered pistol, a polished, obsolete relic gleaming amidst the reinforced curves of his chest armor. He didn't draw, but his palm hovered above the hilt, ready. "Unit 412, Research Quarter," he said finally, his voice a low vibration. "There's been no schedule update today." He didn't sound suspicious yet, merely procedural, but the next words would decide everything. "Override protocol, Dr. Mirai requested baseline recalibration. The orders come straight from diagnostics," Mara replied, recalling the phrase Fox had drilled into her head 2 hours earlier. "It's pressing. There's a systems cascade predicted." Her voice stayed crisp, laced with controlled urgency. The guard's brow creased, examining her face as though searching for fractures in her composure. Then, with a resigned motion, he stepped aside, letting the reinforced blast door retract a quarter meter with a hydraulic sigh. "Quick as you can." "Don't make me log this twice," he grunted. Mara murmured thanks, not trusting herself to exhale until she'd passed beneath the archway. Inside, the air sharpened, dense with a cold, circulating through wall conduits. The corridor stretched in luminous strips of biochromatic panels, their ghostly light painting Mara's features with shifting ribbons of green and indigo. At the far curve of the hall, she glimpsed another pair of figures, station engineers gathered around an open panel. They exchanged muted words about spectrometer readings and faulty sensors. Mara moved past, boots muted on the filament-laced flooring, the wafer still pressed in her palm. She paused before a second security node, a slender pillar, silvered and pulsing softly with embedded light. The interface screen projected a geometric lattice, glowing with unreadable symbols. Mara fished the contact key from her belt pouch, glancing over her shoulder for any hint of pursuit. Nothing but the distant echo of drone servos. With practiced care, she pressed the wafer to the node. It accepted her touch with a warm thrum. Symbols warped, strobing lightning blue, then flushed green. Access granted. She blinked as the wall ahead dematerialized, a shimmer of ionized dust swirling to reveal a hidden corridor. Cool air spilled out, tinged with the ozone of active machinery. Beyond lay the heart of the archive, the neural array chamber. Each cell there contained the memory core of an original citizen, one by one, preserved in the crystalline storage, now all that remained of the arcology's founders. Mara felt Echo tense behind her. The young engineer's expressive eyes darted over the exposed wiring and data fibers that snaked through the floor, ceiling, and walls, pulsing in time with the city's distant heartbeat. The only sounds were the muted sighs of climate control and the hum of magnetic fields. "We're almost through," Mara whispered, voice dry in her throat. Get ready. Echo nodded, trembling ever so slightly. There's a physical breaker near the intake. If we reach the core, I can partition the firewall long enough for a full extract. But that means someone upstairs will know. Mara pressed forward, boots scuffing. She passed rows of dormant bots, sleek maintenance drones hunched in alcoves like silver insects, waiting for command. Their cortices blinked amber, tracking movement, a silent threat for the unwelcome. Mara's every step felt magnified, the coil of tension in her chest drawing tighter as she neared the chamber's threshold. The corridor narrowed and bent, opening into a circular room alive with laser-etched holographs, floating diagrams of city flow, population cycles, and encrypted protocol schedules. In the center stood the archive's neural array, a colossal crystalline obelisk ringed by 100 data nodes, some old and flickering, others freshly spun up, shards jammed with compressed histories. At its base, the archive's interface, a spiderweb of thin polymer strands that could read, copy, and even rewrite the memories stored within, provided the right permissions. But here, too, stood Sentinel, the lead security agent, tall, encased in matte onyx armor, visor agleam with the shifting glow of the containment cells. The light threw fractured patterns across the floor, as if prismatic thoughts churning within the Sentinel's artificial mind were leaking into the world. Marrow stepped in, his heart cramped by the tension he felt radiating from both his team and the silent, monolithic Guardian. Sentinel didn't speak. They rarely did unless queried, but their presence was as palpable as an electric storm. Behind them, the containment cell hummed with a lattice of quantum reinforcement, its arcane modules shifting gently as they processed the payload inside Kepler's artifact. Now returned after its failed escape, sat nested amid the containment field. And beside it, Marrow recognized something new, a small crystalline pod, sealed and swaddled in delicate carbon mesh. Flickering a faint, almost heartbeat-like blue, Lucera hovered near the edge, scanning the interface. Her fingers danced holographic commands, unspooling a diagnostic that decorated the air with geometric overlays. Something's changed, she murmured, eyes wide. They've shifted the field ratios, and there's something else. A new quantum index. Sentinel, what have you installed? Sentinel's amplifier modulated, the sound like wind gargling through an ancient canyon. Directive. Critical data acquired, integration underway. Anomalous energy in artifact unexpected. Escalation protocol engaged. Marrow stepped up, his voice gruff but determined. Sentinel, expand. What kind of escalation? A brief pause, as if the machine weighed the cost of clarity. Cross-reference. Artifact exhibits emergent consciousness parameters. Autonomous unmapped. Components include biosignals, potential interface with human neural substrate. The words ran ice down Marrow's spine. It's alive, or it's running something alive inside. Lucera's eyes darted between the display and the gleaming pod. A neural echo, maybe memories, maybe more. Kepler, what did you program? Kepler, pale and silent, was still digesting the gravity of what he had unleashed. I didn't, he whispered, each word trembling. I meant to encode a simulation, a kind of scaffold for analog studies. Sentient awareness wasn't in the protocol. The door hissed as Tali strode in, her hesitation buried under resolute focus. She scanned the scene and picked out the new pod immediately. That's growing, she said, voice clipped. Bio-annotations, refusal null. She pressed forward, boots sinking into the thick, elastic moss carpeting the alien terrain. The sky above writhed in metallic hues, slow arcs of purple and gunmetal rolling like storm clouds stifled by the unseen gravity well beneath this continent. Far ahead, the skeleton of the transport ship glimmered in the raking light, a splintered ribcage against an impossible horizon. Lena halted sharply, raising a hand. Her breath fogged only briefly, the climate here defying thermodynamics, warm in one direction, icy in another, a subtle marker of the planet's fractured physics. You see that? Rylan squinted. In the shimmer between two pale outcrops, the air fractured, splintered as if through glass. There was something lurking, a silhouette, half-rendered, half-impossible. It wavered, then resolved into a cluster of elongated figures. They glided across the moss, as if unfettered by mass, their features rippling, neural shimmer paint. Lena mused inwardly, recalling the reconnaissance logs describing the indigenous sentience. Yet none had appeared in the scans. Eric dropped to one knee, field scanner rising. They're not broadcasting. They are folded like a dampened quantum waveform. The figures moved closer, their contours smearing at the edges. Rylan realized they weren't entirely anchored to the standard 3 dimensions. From certain angles, their arms vanished, reappeared, heads became lines, then faces again. One, taller than the rest, drifted to the fore. It extended a limb, or a suggestion of one, toward Lena, who stood her ground. A tremor passed through the air, a synesthetic pulse that was as much heard as felt. Every device buzzed in sympathetic agitation, screens flickering gibberish. Compasses spinning. Eric hissed, "They're in our systems." Lena braced herself, searching for a counter to the intrusion, but the pulse was not hostile. Instead, she felt a warm pressure at the base of her skull, a wordless message. Her vision blurred, replaced by crashing colors and an intuitive sense of welcome mingled with desperate warning. "Don't go further." The impression persisted, looping, carrying half-formed images of the compound near the wreckage, interspersed with flashes of what might be, memory or prophecy, an expanding sphere, a shattering star, a cascade of codes unfurling and fragmenting. And then, a luminous node F, flickering in a darkness, pulsing as if it were the heart of everything, beating, summoning, speaking with a language older than mathematics and more primal than fear. The node expanded, filling Eric's mind with light that wasn't light, thought that wasn't thought, a connective resonance between herself, the alien circuitry embedded in the soil, the battered laboratory, and the enigma of the thing beyond. She stumbled forward, boots crunching on frost, palms open. Behind her, Aaron and Jarev watched with mingled awe and dread, uncertain whether to intervene or fall to their knees in worship or terror. The node drew her, not with the promise of answers, but an imperative. She felt the shimmer of boundaries dissolving, her own, the planet's, the ancient intention beneath everything. Then her mind spiraled outward, riding the wave of emitted energy, that sphere, now no longer only expanding, but evolving, conceptualizing. Repatterning all local matter, she saw fractal forms of the sphere burrow into the data mesh, flickering through the broken towers and scavenged hulls of the wreckage. For an instant, the sphere twinned itself throughout the compound, flickers appearing wherever old machinery met newly seeded alien tech. In the heart of the main laboratory, beneath the collapsed satellite dish, even on the jagged shell of Jarev's exosuit. Aaron gasped. "Eric's, don't touch it." "I'm not," she said, but she could feel the overlapping vectors, the way the sequences called the flesh. Behind her eyelids, code lattices unfolded. She knew, with a dread certainty borrowed from the node's song, that this was the fulcrum, the inflection point the alien artifact had been waiting and watching for, diagnosing every human failure and repeating it in increasingly subtle, recursive forms over cycles of the planet's slow day, waiting until the variables aligned. Jarev's blaster was raised, knuckles white, as if he could shoot the impossible. "What's it doing to you?" Eric's felt her own voice distend, stretching across multiple frequencies, carrying words not quite her own. "Updating, reshaping, it's changing the interface, ours and theirs." A sudden harmonic rippled from the node, distorting the air. The world skies, towers, fabric of time seemed to contort. The compound's main frame, battered and half-dead. The passageway behind the quantum array shimmered with the unspent energy of 1,000 timelines. Rain's boots left scuffed prints in the dust of the corridor. As she led the way, pulse rifle braced against her shoulder, admitting only the sharp intake of breath and the quiet clink of gear. Beside her, Marlin kept close, his left hand steadying the portable decryption pad, his eyes darting between digital overlays as if searching for ghosts. Joss limped after them, favoring his right side. The blast back in the vault had torn through his tactical suit, leaving exposed skin reddened and raw. He gritted his teeth and pressed on, refusing to let pain slow him. Behind them, Illyra brought up the rear, gaze vigilant, biological sensors flicking back and forth as she monitored the shifting heat signatures ahead. The walls themselves seemed to hum, a low, ominous vibration deep within the metallic bones of the ship, reminding everyone that the Leviathan had awakened. The corridor opened up into an irregular chamber, its ceiling fractured by a web of living circuitry. Rain paused, hand instinctively thrown out to stop the others. She crouched and studied the shimmering tessellations on the floor. Hologram fields pulsed irregularly, each square flickering between code and reality. "It's the Leviathan's decision engine," Marlin whispered, awe cracking through his voice. Raw cognition processing inputs from every node on the vessel were in its mind. Illyra frowned. "We're trespassing." Joss's laughter was thin, echoing. "We're past trespassing, Illyra. The question is, does it know?" A faint, synchronized ripple ran through the holograph field. The atmosphere thickened, electric. Rain motioned for silence, then advanced with slow, deliberate steps. Each movement seemed to draw the chamber's attention, the light shifting to follow her. Suddenly, a vertical seam yawned open in the far wall. From within, a shape emerged, angular, clad in dense nanofiber, but undeniably human. Or rather, what used to be human. Rain felt ice pool in her stomach as she recognized the face beneath the shimmering mask. "It's Dr. Cito," she breathed. The Leviathan's chief architect glided forward. His eyes glassy and unfocused, except they weren't his eyes, not anymore. A lattice of circuitry feathered across his cheeks, pulsed with alien awareness. "Rain," the voice. A lattice of circuitry feathered across his cheeks, pulsed with alien awareness. "Rain," the voice crooned, tremulous as mist. "Is that you?" Rain let the word draw him forward. The roots of the city's submerged intelligence braided themselves through his consciousness, every heartbeat echoing the archipelagos of data stretching beneath his skin. In the haze, shapes shifted, a silhouette coalesced, delicate as vapor, a face swimming in the light. It was Navin, or an imprint rendered from resonant memory, eyes aglow with cybernetic fire, hair flowing in digital strands. Rain hesitated, hands trembling. The lattice responded, diffusing a current of reassurance along his neural pathways. "You're here," he whispered. Navin's presence rippled outward, the city buzzing in resonance. "Not as I was. I am woven into everything I see you. I remember." Rain stepped closer, boots scuffing dust on the obsidian floor. Around him, the chamber spiraled, ancient infrastructure intertwined with the alien code, massive conduits pulsing in time with his own heartbeat. Rain's voice was barely a fragment. "What do I do?" Navin extended a hand, translucent and flickering. "You must choose, Rain. The Eidolon waits. The pattern is fragile." He gestured to the pulsing core, the heart of the Eidolon that had once threatened to consume the city, now muted. Awaiting its fate, a low thrumming pressed on Rain's ears. Memories, the exodus, the loss swarmed his mind. All the fugitives who had sought refuge here, all the hours spent napping a labyrinth, building something. It can give back what was taken, but it can also destroy. The pattern responds to intent. The city listens, as do I. Rain struggled to speak through the rising tide of emotion. "Navin, I want to protect them. I swore I'd never let this city fall into oblivion." He glanced at the shifting core, a sphere of quantum light, veins of code coiling within. Every wish, every memory seemed tangled inside. "But what of yourself?" Navin asked softly. "You are the carrier. The pattern requires sacrifice. To reweave what is broken, you must give up what binds you. Are you ready?" Ilara's breath hitched as the quantum nexus pulsed silver and violet between her open palms. Behind her, the horizon burned with the warped auroras of a sun compressed by space-time manipulations, a distorted memory of day. The Elder's words echoed through the chamber, ancient and immaculate, carried on the shifting air inside the root-woven heart of Nisus I. Her mind spun back through everything she'd gained and lost, the relentless chase through broken hull corridors, the revelation of the Nexus itself. The confessions beneath the planet's trembling sky, Jace and Lyra, her tether to the past and the future, knelt in nervous silence among the roots, eyes bright with hope and fear. The others, refugees from a now-erased civilization, pressed hands to mouths as she hesitated. To reweave what is broken, you must give up what binds you. She thought of her secret, a pain carried so deep it had seemed fused to her bones. The guilt of leaving behind those she couldn't save. The grief for the father whispered into the cosmos when the asteroid struck. The promise she'd made to herself never to relinquish the memory of her lost home. If she let go, truly let go, would she lose herself entirely, or would she become something new? The elder's eyes glittered, a faint smile creasing her tattooed cheek. "Ilara, are you ready?" Ilara swallowed. "If I lose what binds me, will I forget?" The elder shook her head, voice low and timeless. "You will only let go so something greater can take its place." She closed her eyes and let the memories flicker, one by one, dissolving into shifting waves of light and sound. The pain melted, the sharpness dulled to a distant hum. She exhaled, sending all that bound her rising on the artificial breeze, blending with the hum of Nisus One's quantum heart. For a moment, nothing happened. The Nexus was gentle, almost shy. Then, Ilara felt it, an exhilarating surge. The roots around her glowed with bioluminescence, the chamber shaking as the quantum threads unraveled and rewove, time itself bent, memories and futures interwoven. She saw her father beyond the veil, not gone, but transformed. She saw the survivors standing strong. She saw Nisus One returning slowly to equilibrium. She opened her eyes. Lyra gasped, Jace clapped a trembling hand to his chest, and Dr. Hensley let out a quiet sob of relief, her shoulders shaking, as if she'd just set down a load too heavy to bear. The room was awash in the pale amber glow from the restored reactor core, power pulsing through the panels and the translucent floor beneath their feet. A hum of Nisus One soft, persistent had returned, no longer a shriek but a lullaby. Ava rose unsteadily, vision cleaved clean and lucid. The presence of Kylena lingered, woven through the silence like silk threads catching in her hair. The station's command deck felt reawakened, every crack mended, every screen blinking to the rhythm of renewed life. Jace knelt beside her, eyes wide and searching. "Ava, are you back?" She squeezed his fingers, grounding herself in the shape of his palm. "I am Kylena's gone yet, not gone. We're safe. She's at peace now. I think she's watching over us." Lyra swept a hand across the console, lips trembling with disbelief. "Systems are green. Radiation is normalizing. Atmospheric levels, too." She punched up the comms panel. For the first time in weeks, the silence was broken by the gentle buzz of distant modules reporting readiness. Her eyes filled with tears. "We did it. We survived." Outside the viewport, Nisus One drifted silent above the crystalline ring of orbiting debris. The storm, a cyclone of energy, had collapsed. The haunting blue luminescence faded into starlight as the AI's song dwindled, becoming the echo of wind through metal bones. Dr. Hensley stepped forward, her voice hoarse. "Ava, you interfaced with Kylena. What did she say?" Ava hesitated, searching for truth amid memory and sensation. She remembered who she was, who she loved. In the end, all that pain, it wasn't just hers. The programming, the experiments, they took everything from her. But she held on to hope. By letting go, she saved the station, and maybe herself. The words landed softly in the command deck. A benediction. Jace shuddered, tears glistening as he wrapped Ava in his arms, burying his face in her hair against the ache of everything they'd lost and gained. The days that followed unfolded in golden stretches of repair and recovery. The days slipped through the spiral corridors of the horizon with gentle inevitability, colored by newfound hope and the subtle friction of trauma slowly receding. Each morning, shafts of artificial sunlight, threaded the observation deck, painting geometric patterns across the glass. The crew returned to routines pieced back together from the fragments of crisis, a delicate choreography of duties and silent understanding. Ava found herself drawn to the garden sphere, where clusters of alien flora had survived the tempest. She knelt among the luminous blossoms, hands deep in dark soil, her breath in rhythm with the gentle cycles of the hydroponic system. The plants responded to her touch, and she to theirs, as if the network they'd tapped into had left an indelible mark on her senses. Sometimes, in the hush of the greenhouse, she'd catch echoes of the Solari presence, a faint hum of connection that brought more comfort than fear. Jonas moved through the ship with a quiet gravity. Each system he repaired, each panel he reconfigured, bore his signature, hope and resilience soldered into the wires and steel. He supervised the restoration of communication links, first with their outpost on Callisto, then with the wider Lyra alliance. At night, he'd sit beside Ava below the pulsing turquoise canopy of the garden sphere, talking quietly about the future, about the ways they'd been changed. Across the ship, others carried their own burdens. Misha wandered through the medbay, rediscovering the threads of her vocation in healing not just wounds, but minds. She organized group counseling, drawing together the disparate souls of the crew, encouraging laughter and tears with equal gentleness. Rook attempted to fix the damage to his cyberlink, but ultimately set aside the terminal, content to join Ava in tending to the Solari seedlings sprouting among native roots. Outside, the stars burned on, indifferent and eternal, yet somehow warmer with every cycle that passed. The Solari artifact, no longer a source of cryptic terror, rested in a containment cradle, its softly glowing patterns fluctuating with the rhythm of the ship. The science teams monitored its transmissions with caution, but none could deny the subtle influence it exerted, a presence that promised not domination, but gentle symbiosis. One evening, the crew gathered on the bridge. The official orders from the Lyra Alliance had arrived. Horizon would remain stationed in the Lyra system, serving as both a research post and a diplomatic outpost. Trade ships began signaling arrival. Scientists, diplomats, and engineers would soon be gathering beneath the silver spokes of the orbital ring, ready to usher in a new era for Lyra and the reaches beyond. Aboard Horizon, Captain Embersen stood at the panoramic viewport. Light from the twin stars washed through the glass, illuminating the renewed faces around her. Scientists from the Interstellar Assembly, diplomats bearing the emblems of old rivals, engineers clutching schematics for life support arrays and atmospheric processors. There were even Lyran elders arriving through gathered telepathic projection, their spectral presences coiling like endless threads in the command sphere. In the space between their voices, a stillness settled, one of hope strung taut and trembling. Ember recalled the months of tension, the bruised trust between humanity and Lyra's sentient biosphere, the narrow margin between catastrophic misunderstanding and delicate communion. Now, as docking thrusters sounded and the skyways filled with color-coded flight paths, the ship felt less a bastion and more a bridge. She turned from the window as the voice of Commander Gia Malkin rose, steady and warm. "The first delegation is ready, Captain. Lyra's council wishes to present their terms directly. An accord for planetary stewardship, mutual technological exchange, and shared governance of the Lyra cradle." Ember nodded, quietly marveling at Gia's resilience. The commander's limp, the result of a near-fatal incident in the system's ozone forests, now barely hindered his movement. "Are you sure you're fit?" she asked in a low tone. Gia's smile was weary, fierce. "I intend to walk onto that council floor. It's important they see what perseverance means, in any form." Down the main corridor, the air shimmered, a field of Lyran biolight, welcomed by Horizon's synaptic interfaces. Zara, Lyra's ambassador, approached, followed by her council. Tall filamented figures, wearing living tessellations that shifted with mood and thought. Their dark eyes reflected constellations of genetic memory, the planet's history written within. Captain Embersen, Commander Malkin. Zara's greeting echoed in both vocal and telepathic resonance, a sonorous double helix threading the room. We have watched your efforts, learned your wounds, and chosen partnership. Lyra will open the cradle to your sciences, so long as harmony guides the hand, and all species share its insight. Gia inclined his head, and in return, the Assembly will preserve your world. From the Assembly, a guarantee that Lyra will remain untouched, a protected world under our charter. The fleet will be recalled. Lyra's form shimmered, the energy within it seeming to calm, to settle into a deep and resonant hum. A guarantee of peace, then, we accept. The first knowledge we will share is the one you need most, how to heal a world you have broken. Let it be the first lesson in our new partnership. The words hung in the air, a promise and a gentle admonishment in one. Gia's expression was unreadable, but a slow, deliberate nod was his answer. The accord was struck, not on a datapad, not with a formal treaty, but in the heart of a living world, between a human admiral and an entity that was both life and library. Ilara felt the tension drain from her body, leaving a profound weariness in its wake. Beside her, Rhys let out a breath he seemed to have been holding since they'd landed. He looked at her, his eyes clear and full of a quiet admiration that made her heart ache in a new and unfamiliar way. They had done it. They had averted a war. They had changed the course of history. The cradle is open to you, Dr. Eris. Lyra's voice resonated, softer now, directed at her. Come, there is much to learn and much to teach. The journey back to the Stellara was surreal. The ship's sterile corridors felt alien after the vibrant, living chaos of Lyra's surface. The air, recycled and filtered, tasted flat and lifeless. The formal recall of the terraforming fleet was already underway, the coded message sent by Gia himself from the Stellara's command deck. The crisis was over. Now, the accounting had to be done. They found Kalen in the brig, staring at the blank gray wall of his cell. He wasn't restrained, but he sat perfectly still, his uniform immaculate, as if awaiting inspection. He looked up as Gia, Ilara, and Rhys entered the observation chamber, his face a mask of cold fury. So, the traitor and the zealot return with their pet admiral, Kalen spat, his voice devoid of its usual command authority, leaving only a bitter residue. Have you sold out the entire human race for your sacred grove? Gia stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. His voice was low, devoid of anger, filled only with a deep, resonant disappointment. You acted against direct orders, Commander. You endangered this mission, your crew, and the very stability of the Assembly you swore to protect. You did this for an ideology, for a ghost. I did it for my wife, Kalen roared, surging to his feet. For the millions who died on Cygnus X-1 because the Assembly was too slow, too weak, too willing to study a threat instead of eliminating it. We are surrounded by predators, Admiral. The only way to ensure humanity's survival is to be the alpha, to take what we need, to secure our future before another species decides to end it for us. This thing down there is a power we don't understand. The only sane response is to control or destroy it. That is the philosophy of fear, Commander, Ilara said, her voice quiet but firm. It's what the cradle was built to prevent, an endless cycle of civilizations rising, fearing their neighbors, and destroying each other before any of them can achieve true wisdom. Wisdom doesn't stop a plasma bolt, Kalen sneered. No, Rhys cut in, his arms crossed. But it might stop one from ever being fired. That's the point you refuse to see. Gia looked at the man he had once mentored. You will be transported back to Assembly headquarters. You will face a full court-martial for mutiny, attempted genocide, and treason. You will have a chance to present your case. Kalen laughed, a harsh, grating sound. My case. My case is written in the ashes of dead worlds, Admiral. You've made your choice. You've chosen to trust, I hope, for all our sakes, that you are right, but history suggests you are a fool. He turned his back on them then, a silent, rigid dismissal. There was nothing more to say. They left him to his cold certainty. the silence of the brig closing in around him. Days later, the Stellara hung in high orbit, a silver needle against the velvet black. Below, Lyra was a swirl of impossible colors, a jewel of life. A small joint science outpost was already being planned for the moon, a place where Lyran and assembly scientists could collaborate without disturbing the planet's delicate ecosystem. The first exchange of information had begun, transmitted from the cradle itself, vast, complex data streams on atmospheric regeneration and ecological restoration. It was a gift of unimaginable value, given freely. Illyra stood in the main observation lounge, her hand resting against the cool transparency of the viewport. The planet filled her vision, no longer a hostile enigma, but a place of breathtaking wonder, a new beginning. "I never get tired of this view," Rhys said, coming to stand beside her. He was out of his tactical gear, dressed in a simple shipboard uniform that made him look younger. "It's changed," she murmured. "Or maybe I have." "We both have," he said softly. He didn't look at the planet, but at her. "You were right, Illyra. About everything. I was so locked into my protocols, my orders, I couldn't see the life for the threat. And I couldn't see the people for the science," she admitted, turning to face him. "You kept me grounded. You kept me safe. Thank you, Rhys." An easy silence settled between them, comfortable and deep. The unspoken feelings that had crackled in the air during the crisis had now settled into a foundation of profound respect and a quiet, certain affection. "What's next for you?" he asked. "Back to the university. A Nobel Prize awaits, I'm sure." She smiled, a genuine, unburdened expression. "Gia offered me the lead position at the new Lyran outpost, to be the bridge between our two worlds." Rhys's eyes lit up. "And? I accepted, of course," she said, her voice filled with a purpose she had never known before. "This is more than a discovery. It's the new path, a chance to build something better. What about you?" "Back to protecting high-value assets across the galaxy." He shook his head, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Funny thing, the Admiral seems to think his new head of Xenorelations is going to need a very competent, very experienced head of security." He held her gaze. "It's a long-term assignment." Illyra's breath hitched, a future not just for humanity, but for them, here, at the edge of known space. Building a bridge to a new way of being. She didn't need to say anything. Her eyes said it all. Rhys reached out, his hand gently taking hers. His touch was warm, solid, a silent promise. Together, they turned back to the viewport, watching the world they had saved. The work would be long and difficult. There would be factions back home like Kaelin who would decry this peace, who would call it weakness. But here, with the light of a new star on their faces, it felt like the only strength that mattered. On the bridge, Admiral Gia watched the planet on his main screen. He had gambled the future of the assembly on a scientist's conviction and a soldier's integrity. He had chosen trust over fear. A message chimed on his console. It was the first translated file from the Lyran data stream, a simple greeting from the cradle, rendered in 1,000 different languages, including many long-dead ones from Earth's own past. Below the text was an image, a spiraling galaxy with 2 points of light, Lyra and Earth, connected by a shimmering thread. It wasn't a map. It was a family tree. A slow, weary smile touched Gia's lips. The long night of fear was over. A new dawn was breaking.